It is not the little powers, bringing revival of provincial life that threatens the pride and freedom of the great powers. It is the hideous entanglement and moral vacancy of their own governments. England, for instance, in the 18th and early 19th centuries, acted the great power with conviction. She was independent, mistress of the sea, and sure of her right to dominion. Difficulties, and even defeats, such as the loss of the American colonies, did not, in the least, daunt her. Her vitality at home and her liberty abroad remained untouched. But gradually, though she suffered no final military defeat, the heart seemed to fail her for so vast an enterprise. It was not the colonies she had lost that maimed her, but those she had retained or annexed. Ireland, South Africa, and India became thorns in her side. The bloated industries which helped her to dominate the world made her incapable of feeding herself. They committed her to forced expansion in order to secure markets and to secure supplies. But she could no longer be warlike with a good conscience. The virtuous thing was to bow one's way out and say, "My mistake." Her kings were half ashamed to be kings. Her liberals were half ashamed to govern. Her church was half ashamed to be Protestant. All became a medley of sweet reasonableness, stupidity, and confusion. Being a great power was now a great burden. It was urgent to reduce responsibility, to reduce armaments, to refer everything to conferences, to support the League of Nations, to let everyone have his own way abroad, and to let everyone have his own way home. Had not England always been a champion of liberty? But wasn't it time for the champion to retire? And wouldn't liberty be much freer without a champion? The other great powers, for abdicating more unwillingly, have not avoided the same fate. They are embarrassed by greater inertia or rebellion at home, and by the same tangle abroad. The brave pose of Germany in 1914, in the old manner of great powers, after a military failure and a sham quiescence, had a terrible sequel. And everyone suffered from general paralysis, industrial and moral. There was in various quarters a ferocious propaganda of philosophical nationalism or philosophical communism. There was industrial unrest, but the great powers were completely impotent before the international stalemate of all their real ambitions. Patriotism attached to a great power is something artificial. It unites two natural different passions, the love of home and the pride of empire. The love of home is topographical, climatic, moral. It is intertwined with the myths and poetry of a nation, with personal affections, and with the comfort and assurance of moving in a familiar world, where you are master and where you may shine. This domestic attachment has little to do with government, and nothing to do with war. But when home is a city, and the city is at the head of an independent state, foreign policy and war may become great affairs of the marketplace. They may supply the chief excitements of civic and even of private life. So in ancient and medieval city-states, and the modern great power is an enlarged and monstrous version of the same double association, the love of one's home landscape and home ways, a natural and innocent love, the pride of empire, the gamble of war, the lust and vanity of competition are added. And for a floating city population without roots, without native culture, such as peasants had, and perhaps without religion, the sporting passion for what they call their country, that is, for the prestige of their government, a passion fed by the newspapers, like the passion for football matches, carries all before it. But only for the nonce. A different propaganda in the press, a different appeal to senseless vanity, may suddenly turn that government of theirs, as they call it, into the supposed enemy of their class and their persons. The pride of empire, the zeal for victory, which were their ruling passions the day before, may seem the day after most wicked delusions. And since these modern masses have no home and hardly nationality, no natural patriotism may subsist to keep them from being blown by a wordy blast like so much bran in the wind. The pride of empire in the Romans, or in the Englishmen of the old school, was an aristocratic passion, almost a bond of duty, and it went beautifully with a home sentiment, also very keen in them. Their national character, deeply saturated with home influences and strictly limited in its virtues, enabled them to explore and govern the most outlandish regions, and even to spend their lives there without dropping one iota of their native orthodoxy. And their function in governing abroad, though it may, unintentionally, have spread their language and manners in certain quarters, was really in the nature of paid services rendered to the foreigner, with no desire to assimilate him. He was not worthy or capable of being assimilated, and a fool if he attempted it. But he might be initiated into certain material arts and positive sciences, for him to combine as best he might with his own traditions, or in the case of the uncivilized native, with his own temperament. Empire building may be conceived as a sort of lay missionary work under military protection, and the army and the government that undertake it no doubt feel, and perhaps ought to feel, a great pride in the work. It is a big business. There is great good to be done in it, and great fortunes to be made. But now the big business of being a great power has perhaps outlived its function. That function was entirely distinct from natural home patriotism. The latter is attachment of a mind with roots to the roots which it has, the love of home and those who have a home. But the big business of imperialism had better be relegated to some non-sentimental authority, less sentimental perhaps than the League of Nations, capable of discerning and enforcing a material equilibrium in the world. If this authority were that of one of the great powers, the first requisite for success will be to wash away all local patriotism from the minds of those universal rulers, so that in obeying them, the world might believe that it was free. It might truly be so, and everything in which freedom is a good